Sociopath. The Difficulties of Sociopaths and Psychopaths by Victor Higgins. Narrated by J.A. Leidig. Chapter 1. Sociopathy. Sociopathy is a description of a pattern of antisocial habits and mindsets, including but not limited to control, deceit, aggressiveness, and an absence of empathy for others. Sociopathy is a non-diagnostic term, and it isn't associated with psychopathy, though the connection results in much confusion. Sociopaths could or might not break the law, but by making use of and controlling others, they breach the trust that the human business operates on. Recognizing and staying away from the sociopath. The specifying attribute of the sociopath is an extensive absence of conscience, a defect in the real moral compass that usually guides people from breaking typical guidelines and towards treating others decently. This detach, though, could be hidden by a captivating behavior. There's both art and science to identifying sociopathy. Is there a simple way to identify a sociopath? No. It's for this reason crucial to tune into your own sense of pain in the company of other individuals. Be prepared to trust your own impulse instead of their guarantees. If a declaration or action feels off, then examine it a bit more. How likely am I to encounter a sociopath? A research study performed in the early 2000s realized that 6.2% of the general population would meet the requirements for narcissistic personality disorder, and 3.7% would meet the requirements for antisocial personality disorder. Those conditions formally catch the maladaptive conduct we describe as sociopathy. What a bad omen should I keep an eye out for? Be careful of people who appear too good to be true. Individuals with antisocial characters can be highly efficient at making your self-confidence, triggering you to neglect conduct that unbiased observers would consider a bad sign: lying, being a cheater, etc. Sociopathy, psychopathy, and related terms. The terms sociopath and psychopath are puzzling just because they're usually used interchangeably, but they aren't synonyms. Even so, there's an important difference. Sociopaths are people whose callous, deceiving conduct is formed mainly by ecological aspects, like child abuse or direct exposure to profitable conduct in others. Psychopathy is innate and immutable. Psychopaths are more likely to commit acts of violence. Still, just because both conditions lie on a spectrum, it can be hard to know which terms best use. Is sociopath a medical analysis? No, sociopathy isn't a scientific term, meaning it isn't backed by the American Psychiatric Association, nor is it used by many psychological health experts. The scientific terms that catch sociopathic conduct are either psychopathy or antisocial personality disorder. What is the distinction between a sociopath and a psychopath? Maybe the most essential distinction is the fact that sociopaths have the ability to form an accessory to a specific person or group, even if limited in number. On the other hand, psychopaths are not able to form or maintain real bonds. What is the distinction between sociopathy and antisocial personality disorder? Sociopathy, like psychopathy, isn't a diagnostic term, though antisocial personality disorder is. The confusion very likely emerged when the terms were conflated by psychological health specialists in the mid 20th century. The simple fact that confusion endures shows the need to better research, study all aspects and subtypes of crazed conduct. What is the distinction between sociopathy and narcissistic personality disorder? Both sociopaths and narcissists can be lovely, manipulative, and misleading. Still, narcissistic personality disorder, or NPD, is a medical diagnostic term, as is antisocial personality disorder, ASPD. When people describe sociopaths, they're describing people whom psychological health experts would define as NPD or ASPD. Chapter 2. Are you dealing with a sociopath? Many people really believe that sociopaths are very dangerous lawbreakers. And while that could hold true, there are many sociopaths who are not. You might not understand this, but you most likely are dealing with one. While a certified expert can really detect this disorder, the following are qualities of a sociopath at work. 1. Is a fantastic charmer. Sociopaths are like you or I. They mix in and are really friendly, charming, and dynamic. They are great communicators and hardly ever are lost for words. They camouflage themselves behind their charm to get what they want. They are great scam artists. And just because of their gift of gab, they get their own way. Watch out for colleagues who like to hear themselves talk and try to use charm to get what they want. 2. Has a sense of privilege. According to a coworker, a scientific psychologist, sociopaths have a sense of privilege that comes from a hidden sense of rage. It allows them to act out in whichever way they happen to choose at that time. Every little thing is up for grabs with sociopaths, and absolutely nothing is off limits. At work, this means that absolutely nothing will stop a psychopath from getting what he or she wants. Those people are relentless, and they want a response to an important question that she or he has. He or she will call you, immediate message you, or come to your desk simply because they feel like you owe an instant answer. So stand back if you happen to be in their way. 3. Does not know how to empathize. Sociopaths find it tough to comprehend other individuals' feelings just because they're incapable of experiencing guilt, embarrassment, or perhaps really love. So do not expect ever to get an apology from this individual. If you do get an apology, be cautious, simply because they're controlling you. Always remember that they only care about themselves. You are a method to an end. In an interview with NPR, M.E. Thomas, author of Confessions of a Sociopath, specified that most likely the largest attribute of a sociopath is their absence of empathy. They can't truly imagine or feel the psychological worlds of others. It's really foreign to them, and they do not have a conscience. 4. Are manipulative and compulsive phonies. Sociopaths are exceptional phonies and lie because they know they can get away with it. They like controlling people and normally target people they really believe they can control. In an interview with Kate Simon from Interview Publication, Dr. Martha Stout, author of The Sociopath Next Door, discussed the flawless victim is a person who is really extremely faithful. Lots of us consider commitment to be a really positive characteristic, and it is a favorable quality. However, It also blinds people to some of the qualities of the individual they are faithful to. So if you find yourself listening to a person at work and doing every little thing that he or she says, you could want to reassess it. Typically, sociopaths do not have many good friends and find it hard to hold down relationships, especially romantic ones. As you take a look around in your work environment, keep some of these qualities in mind to see if you are dealing with a sociopath. In case you were just wondering if you were a sociopath, I found the following questions by Jim Edwards' piece, 16 Concerns That May Tell You Whether You're a Sociopath, on Company Expert. He pulled it together from Dr. Hervey Cleckley's 16 Behavior Qualities. Please note this isn't clinical, but it could be a great indication. 1. Are you ostensibly lovely and smart? 2. Do you have misconceptions or other signs of illogical thinking? 3. Are you extremely anxious, or do you have other neuroses? 4. Are you trustworthy? 5. Do you lie or say insincere things? 6. Do you feel regret or embarrassment? 7. Is your conduct antisocial for no good reason? 8. Do you have poor judgment and struggle to learn a lot from inexperience? 9. Are you pathologically egocentric and incapable of love? 10. Do you normally lack the capability to respond mentally? 11. Do you lack insight? 12. Are you responsive to others socially? 13. Are you an insane party fiend? 14. Do you make incorrect suicide threats? 15. Is your sex life impersonal, insignificant, or inadequately incorporated? 16. Have you could not follow a life plan? Chapter 3. Cause, Inspiration, and Relationships. I have been showing a lot recently on sociopathy as a function of talking about TV, about Jodi Arias, the woman pursued the 2008 murder of her sweetheart. I've come to ask myself some really fundamental questions about the ones who are sociopaths, as I very much expect that Mrs. Arias certifies as one. Farther, just recently reading previous Harvard professor Martha Stout's book, The Sociopath Next Door, I have been reminded how strange sociopathy remains. Part of what makes sociopathy so remarkable is that we comprehend extremely little about what triggers it. The sociopath overall is little understood, manifested mainly in the standard belief that the sociopath has the destructive intent to hurt others. The truth, though, is more intricate than a single answer enables. Are sociopaths bad people? It's simple to utter a full-throated yes, for so many reasons, but the reality is that sociopaths do not always have harmful emotions towards others. The issue is that they have really little true feeling at all for others, which enables them to deal with others as things. The influence of their conduct is certainly harmful, though the intent isn't always the exact same thing. Eventually, the sociopath normally mentally ruins those that are close to him or her, but the sociopath damages them in a way constant with their special method to others. They take them out like your typical individual exterminates characters in a computer game. Those in the wake of the sociopath suffer because they have the liability sociopaths do not. Real human emotions that originate from a deep sense of social responsibilities to others, an ethical anchor that's supposed to be part and parcel of having relationships. The sense of privilege that includes sociopathy is amazing to the ones that comply with the social laws and conventions of our culture. So, where does the privilege originate from? It comes from a hidden sense of rage. Sociopaths feel deeply upset and resentful beneath their often charming outside, and this rage fuels their sense that they have the actual right to act out in whichever way they happen to choose at that time. Every little thing is up for grabs with sociopaths, and absolutely nothing is off limitations. In relationships, sociopaths are the embodiment of the Machiavellian beings. If they were astrological signs, they would be Geminis, with two unique selves at work. They are duplicity incarnate, with a refined self revealed to the world and a concealed, hidden self that has a stiff and computing agenda. Presume the greatest level of the social hierarchy and win, win, win. It's usually the kindest and most trusting people who suffer the most at the hands of sociopaths, and the healing process for these people continues long after the relationship has ended. Those in the wake of the sociopath are typically left just wondering, what happened to me? Why does this one person have such an effective impact on me? In the media, I am typically asked, what triggers sociopathy? One of the most regularly asked questions is, are they born that way? The truth is that we do not know. Stout in 2005 summarized the research well, clarifying that as much as half of the reason for sociopathy can be credited to heritability, while the staying portion is a complicated and not yet understood mix of ecological aspects, especially a history of youth abuse among sociopaths isn't always present. Likewise, Ferguson in 2010 performed a meta-analysis and learned that 56% of the difference in antisocial personality disorder, the official disorder of sociopathy, can be clarified through hereditary impacts. I'm impressed to say that I have huge tanks of empathy for the sociopath. In the meantime, to see the life trajectory of a sociopath, it is hard to not feel miserable that the sociopath has a presence that separates him from the huge bulk of typical people. They typically wind up in jail and never ever really know what it feels a little like to really love and trust. Just envision what that existence is a lot like, not just for a week or month or summer season, but for life. Do they even know what they are missing? No, but they live in a consistent state of hypervigilance, seeing the world in a sterilized, game-like way. They have no actual attachment to anybody. Given the significant role biology appears to play in creating or planting the seed of sociopathy, are sociopaths deserving of some empathy? If, as the research suggests, sociopaths are born with a predisposition to sociopathy, it means that they do not have overall power over their conduct. To believe that a bad kid is born with such a dreadful lifelong liability is an awfully miserable reality. After all, no kid really deserves to carry around that sort of luggage. I found something online about a British model who was the victim of a dreadful criminal offense in which a guy tossed acid on her face as she walked on the pathway of a congested city street. At the time, lots of people reacted to the news in the media and called the criminal evil. My handling of the topic was that evil wasn't an enough term for the man who did the criminal activity, preferring instead the concept that the lawbreaker was psychologically ill. Actually, as a psychologist, I do not really believe true wicked exists. Rather, I see this circumstance, and the bigger problem of sociopathy, as a source of malfunctioning, just as if a robotic gone wild. We can try to call it whatever we wish, but the truth remains that we do not totally comprehend it, and unless brain research shows otherwise gradually, we could never ever completely comprehend the etiological process underlying sociopathy. The present Jodi Arias trial that has brought the mental labyrinth of sociopathy back into American culture, a pattern that emerges each few years when a legal case has all of the repairings for a supersized, mind-blowing trial. Day after day, Mrs. Arias, being in the courtroom effectless, just as if a character in a motion picture rather than her own life. While my sense is that Mrs. Arias is a real sociopath, to see her every day in the courtroom is to see a woman who appears extremely lost, lonesome, and emotionless. In so many ways, she seems the best face of sociopathy, ever-changing, highly protected, and empty. At the end of the day, she's an effective tip of how complicated, unsafe, and yes, misinterpreted the sociopath remains today. Chapter 4. The main distinction between sociopaths and psychopaths. Are you unsure of the difference between a sociopath and a psychopath? If so, you aren't alone. Most psychiatrists, forensic psychologists, criminologists, and policemen improperly use the terms sociopath and psychopath interchangeably. Leading specialists also disagree on the significant distinctions between the two conditions, and those that concur that there are distinctions typically disagree on what those distinctions are. I point out that there are clear and considerable differences. The fifth edition of the Diagnostic and Statistical Handbook of Mental Illness, DSM-5, released by the American Psychiatric Association in 2013, notes both sociopathy and psychopathy under the heading of antisocial personality disorders, ASPD. Those conditions share many typical behavior characteristics, which results in some of the confusion. Key qualities that sociopaths and psychopaths share include a neglect for laws and social mores, a neglect for the rights of others, a failure to feel regret or guilt, a propensity to show violent or aggressive conduct. In addition to their commonness, sociopaths and psychopaths also have their own special behavior attributes and origins. Sociopaths have a tendency to be worried and quickly upset. They are inconsistent and susceptible to psychological outbursts, and that includes fits of rage. They are more likely than psychopaths to be ignorant and reside on the fringes of society. They are in some cases not able to hold down a stable job or to remain in one place for long. It's typically hard, but not completely unrealistic, for sociopaths to form attachments with others. Many sociopaths have the ability to form an accessory to a certain person or group, though they have no regard for civilization or its guidelines in general. Because of this, the significant attachments of any sociopath will be few in number and limited in scope. As a guideline, they will deal with relationships. In the eyes of others, sociopaths will typically seem disrupted or irregular. Any criminal activities they commit, including but not limited to murder, will have a tendency to be haphazard and spontaneous instead of prepared. Because of their apparently unpredictable conduct, sociopaths are much easier for both specialists and non-professionals to determine than are psychopaths. Unlike sociopaths, psychopaths are not able to form psychological attachments. Psychopaths have the tendency to be aggressive and predatory in nature. They see others as things for their amusement. Though they lack empathy, psychopaths usually have deactivating or perhaps lovely characters. They are manipulative and can quickly get individuals' trust. They learn how to simulate feelings, regardless of their failure to actually feel them, and will appear regular to unwary people. Psychopaths are typically well read and hold consistent jobs. Some psychopaths are so proficient at control and mimicry that they have families and other long lasting relationships without those around them ever believing their true nature. When committing criminal activities, psychopaths thoroughly prepare each detail ahead of time and usually have contingency strategies in place. They will appear imperturbable in a crisis. Unlike their sociopathic equivalents, demented crooks are cool, calm, and precise. From a law enforcement perspective, the cold-blooded nature of psychopaths makes them extremely reliable lawbreakers. As such, they're normally harder to determine than are sociopaths. Regrettably, it can be hard to know when a crazed predator has targeted you for exploitation. From a diagnostic perspective, the etiology or reason for psychopathy is not the same as that of sociopathy. I say that psychopathy is the outcome of nature, genes, while sociopathy is the outcome of nurture, environment. Psychopathy is associated with a physiological problem that leads to the underdevelopment of the part of the brain accountable for impulse control and feelings. Sociopathy, on the other hand, is more likely than the item of youth trauma and physical or psychological abuse. Because sociopathy seems learned instead of inherent, sociopaths are very capable of empathy in certain scenarios and with certain people, but not others. Eventually, psychopathy is rarer than sociopathy and is considered to be the most harmful of antisocial personality disorders. Not remarkably, many serial killers, which includes Ted Bundy, Dennis Rader, BTK, and John Wayne Gacy, have been unremorseful psychopaths. Undoubtedly, it is approximated that almost 50% of all serial killers are psychopaths. Chapter 5: Why Sociopaths Are So Difficult to Determine. As a psychologist, I studied sociopathy and dealt with medically distressed victims for more than 25 years. And still, I didn't totally really appreciate the frustrating occurrence of sociopathic victimization till I started to write something about it. Since my book, The Sociopath Next Door, was released in 2005, I have been flooded with telephone calls and letters from readers who felt forced to tell me of their own encounters with people who appeared to have no conscience. So inspired have these readers been to tell me their stories that some have managed to get my unlisted home contact number or have waited outside my office door in Boston, intending to catch me coming or going. I chose to establish a site with a devoted email address so readers could relate their experiences without needing to start such desperate searches. As quickly as I did, I started getting an apparently limitless gush of messages from all over the world. Many of the people who called me, and who continue to do so day to day, are handling a possible sociopath who is just not preventable, the opposing party in a custody fight, a manager or a colleague in a job too important to leave, an adult in their family, or in maybe the most agonizing circumstance of all, one of their own kids. The readers who seek me out are from all genders and many walks of life, but they have certain experiences in common. They have all felt alone and more than a little insane. Each has really believed himself or herself to be the only individual ever deceived and controlled by a human who ended up to have an alien mind. They have made it through a reality-shattering relationship with at the very least a single person incapable of guilt, regret, and even concern. Plus, till they read The Sociopath Next Door, all of these survivors have presumed that nobody would actually believe their unusual stories. The book provides them the principles and the words to specify their experiences. Now they were looking for tools to safeguard themselves and their loved ones. Almost all of the letters I have gotten throughout the years fall naturally into some classifications, and in media appearances and personal discussions, I have been asked many questions on these exact same important subjects: the grim reality of sociopathic kids and how to handle them, particular techniques you can use to get rid of a sociopath who has targeted you at work, what to do when, terrifyingly, your challenger in a kid custody struggle is a sociopath, assaultive sociopaths, consisting of cyber assault, and the distinctions between a sociopath and a narcissist. Most conscienceless people trying to mix in with the rest of society and not wishing to be caught or put behind bars commit unnoticeable ethical and social criminal offenses. Contrary to well-known mistaken beliefs, sociopaths who turn to deadly violence are a little minority. They are more very likely to be damaging phonies and manipulators who play harsh mental, monetary, and political games with our lives. They make up the single biggest subgroup of domestic abusers. People who try to boost their sense of power and control by battering on partners, kids, and the seniors in the personal privacy of their houses. This is one reason we find them so tough to determine. However, when sociopaths do murder, the results interrupt us deeply. The pattern seen in homicidal sociopathic conduct is inspired in a different way from non-sociopathic violence. Psychologists are loath to suggest avoidance as the resolution to an issue, but where sociopathy is concerned, avoidance is actually the ideal course. Whether violent or not, sociopaths live beyond the social agreement that binds the rest of us, are distinctively devastating, and will never ever have the ability to take part in genuine personal or work relationships with anybody. Their sole fixation is to have power over others, and the most recommended and least harmful strategy is to keep from such people completely. Having said that, avoiding the sociopath isn't always possible. What chance does a truthful individual have against a smart sociopath, a disguised foe whose unique powers are duplicity and outright shamelessness? How does somebody with regular psychological responses to the suffering of others beat an opponent who can guiltlessly do anything, no matter how damaging or vicious? How can a genuine and sincere individual convince others of a sociopath's true nature when this computing pretender fools and controls even exceptionally smart people, in some cases, just for the excitement of making them leap? My objective here is to supply clear and useful answers to these questions and to deal head-on with the scared insecurities that occur when people of conscience should oppose callous manipulators. To the woman who appeared on my doorstep, and so many others, I want to offer answers that are positive and pushing. As a sincere, caring individual, you have much more power than you know. Seeing the pattern, comprehending the true nature of sociopathy, and most crucially, having reliable techniques to ward off the sociopath's agenda will enable you to recognize sociopathy with confidence and react with smart and effective action when life definitely needs you to decide. Chapter 6. Sociopaths like to abuse individuals' conscience. A little bit of time ago, I obtained the book The Sociopath Next Door by Martha Stout, PhD, from a good friend of mine who suggested for its special take on sociopathy. It's a cautioning to unwary readers that some of the world's most devastating people aren't behind bars, but are our next door neighbors, parents or caretakers, partners, instructors, kids, colleagues, and good friends. The writer indicates that around 4% of the population experiences antisocial personality disorder, which, as she describes, as the condition of missing conscience, and additionally as sociopathy. Even though some scientists will disagree with her interchangeable use of the two terms, such an argument, though beneficial, doesn't interfere with the message provided in The Sociopath Next Door. Dr. Stout starts by asking the reader to imagine a world where they have no conscience, therefore releasing them from, to name a few downers, guilt, embarrassment, regret, and concern for others. She then asks the reader to imagine if they had the ability to hide this mental defect from others, how they may live. They would, after all, be free to look for all the power, cash, and impact they preferred in the quickest, crudest, and most callous way without the nagging burden of doing what's right. Or perhaps Dr. Stout says, you aren't enthusiastic, but look for only to unwind and live as carefree as possible from the goodwill of others. Without conscience, you would be free from the guilt and embarrassment that typically originates from being a freeloader. The world Dr. Stout is asking the reader to imagine is the world of a sociopath. That isn't Hollywood's variation of a sociopath, the social recluse with the transparently frightening attitude, but a very real serpent in the grass. It's your lovely and tormented friend, your overworked and stressed partner, or your down on your luck mom. Dr. Stout overthrows the reader's idea of a sociopath, warning that the real telltale indication isn't fear, but pity. She specifies the most trusted indication, the most universal conduct of dishonest people isn't directed, as one may imagine, at our fearfulness. It is, perversely, an appeal to our compassion. The pity play, or effort to attract the compassion of others, was also attended to in research carried out by the Minnesota Department of Corrections and the Hazelden Structure, 2002. There, scientists concluded that criminal thinkers usually try to control others by depicting themselves as a victim, turning to fear methods only when the victim position fails to get them what they actually want. The act of generating pity from another unquestionably makes the elicitor something to be pitied, a victim per se. It's humanity to help the pitied. For that reason, the pity play or victim position stands to get the sociopath what she or he wants quickly and without being learnt as a bad guy. That is control. Control is the tool of choice for clever criminal thinkers, and according to Dr. Stout, the sociopaths among us. She says, sociopaths have no regard whatever for the social agreement, but they do know how to use it for their benefit. And all in all, I am certain that if the devil existed, he would want us to feel really sorry for him. Chapter 7. How to Find a Sociopath in 3 Steps. Whether you are attempting to identify a possible school shooter, a harmful romantic partner, an overall phony at work, a fraudster on the web, or somebody pushing a phony organization offer on you, it helps to know some of the indications for sociopaths. Sociopaths can have some hidden and hazardous character functions. The DSM 5 notes 10 requirements for identifying antisocial character disorders, ASPD, but it presumes you have professional training and a lot of info about the people. I'm not going to teach you how to detect an ASPD or how to differentiate them from a sociopath or psychopath or scam artist. This part concentrates on a few of the tips that they might give you at your first few encounters. Those tips could help you choose to keep your distance, in spite of how attractive they might appear on the surface area. Do not be a target. The theme of supremacy. The DSM-5 mentions that the important function is their desire to overlook or break the rights of others. From my experience, in over 30 years handling legal cases, family disputes, office conflicts, and other circumstances as a high conflict specialist, I would say that the driving force with sociopaths, and they have a ton of energy, is to completely dominate others. This might or could not include breaking the law. They want to completely dominate people so as to get things from them, like their belongings, cash, sex, service partners, houses, automobiles, financial investments, track record, etc. However, they also like controlling others just for the internal feeling of it. The internal feeling of power and control. Sociopaths lack a conscience, so they will do anything to get what they want. The 3-step technique I suggest, using to rapidly measure whether somebody has sociopathic characteristics or any high conflict character pattern, is what I call the WEB approach. Their words, your feelings, and their habits, which includes actions 90% of people would never ever do. The following are some tips you might pick up from somebody by utilizing this approach. Their words. Sociopaths are quick talkers. Their words are primarily, if not totally, incorrect. However, they use many words created to cover their conduct. They could be an entirely different individual from whom they say that they are. Look out for extremes. Huge pledges, huge stories about the past or the future, and huge strategies, without any basis for them or no experience at whatever they're planning. Incredibly positive words. You're the best. I can't live without you. I'm going to never ever hurt you. You should have better. You make me a much better individual. We'll be wealthy. You're the most lovely, wise, convincing, truthful, ethical, spiritual, and so on individual I have ever met. I'm going to take you all over the world. I will introduce you to some truly well-known people. Really, believe me. Exceptionally negative words. On the other hand, their words can be incredibly negative, usually after they have understood you a bit. They will blame you, their target of blame, for small or non-existent offenses. You lied to me, although you didn't, and they lie continuously to you. I can never ever trust you again. Nobody will ever employ you. Nobody will ever want you. I own you. I am going to ruin you. Do not tell anybody what we're doing, or I'm going to need to hurt you. You are worthy of to be penalized after what you did. You owe me this. I have never ever hurt you, but look at what you've done to me. The switch they make. A sociopath will usually change backward and forward between severe charm and severe threats to get what they want, depending upon what they see is or is not working at the time. Keep an eye out for strong viewpoints, which they then drop to adopt the opposite viewpoint when it is practical. They will use whatever words they view as helping them completely dominate the circumstance at the moment, like an artist's scheme of colors. They will also find out your vulnerable points and vulnerabilities. They might use them favorably, with words to enhance your ego. You will be exceptionally effective. With my connections and your brains, we have got it made. Or they might use your inmost fears. See, your body truly is not appealing at all. Nobody will ever want to make love with you, or nobody will ever employ you. I am the best you will ever get. You better be thankful, really grateful. Your feelings. How do you probe the individual? It's typically your feelings that initially tell you to be careful, simply because your brain wants to actually believe them. Lots of people wed sociopaths or employ them, work handle them, or choose them to be accountable positions, despite the fact that they saw some cautionary signs. They wanted to actually believe the individual's words instead of paying more attention to how they felt. Trust your emotions more than their words. If you have an unpleasant or severe feeling, check it out. Do a little research or ask around about what people think of so and so. Fear. One typical feeling around a sociopath is that they could hurt you if they wanted to. Sociopaths can be predators, so you might naturally feel awkward being on your own with them. You might unexpectedly get the inner feeling that you want to get out of a scenario. Go and ask questions later. Do not let them talk you out of your fears. Take your time and get more background info about them. Infatuation. This is the other extreme. Simply because of their many incredibly positive words, people can fall for them, specifically if they're lonesome, mourning, or have low self-confidence at the time. For more, see my book Dating Radar, co-authored by Megan Hunter. This also goes for hiring. In today's hectic and competitive organization world, sociopaths can make themselves seem like a superstar. If you feel swept off your feet by a prospective service partner, staff member, or company, you might be succumbing to a sociopath. Since they're all over, you need to maintain a healthy skepticism no matter where you are. Severe compassion. If you find yourself feeling incredibly considerate towards somebody, you could want to take a look at why. Sociopaths are experienced at saying they have been victims and tell good stories to go with it. They usually benefit from people in susceptible or understanding circumstances, the senior citizens, victims of unnatural catastrophes, worshippers, volunteers, and so on. By playing hard on your compassion, they could have the ability to get you to do things you would not generally provide for anybody else. Their conduct, the 90% rule. A remarkably basic way to identify a sociopath is to stay concentrated on their conduct and overlook their words. Pay unique attention to any severe conduct, things they do that 90% of the people would not. Ask yourself, would I ever do that? Severe conduct is rather common for sociopaths, but they rapidly cover it up with excuses. I was tired. I was under a lot of tension. He or she made me do it. I needed to do it given what the other individual did. It practically does not matter what the conduct was. Their excuses are typically the exact same. They are always blameless and hardly ever ask forgiveness, unless they're caught, and it will make them look good. Targets of blame. Many sociopaths wind up concentrated on targets of blame, people they feel warranted in treating cruelly, whether in their families, at work, or in their communities. They usually enjoy the suffering of other individuals. While they might target anybody, many people will keep away from them. The ones they keep targeting or bullying are the ones that stay engaged with them. Either they get aggressive back with the sociopath, who can do aggressive better than practically anybody else, or they show their fear or aggravation. Both approaches are reckless. It is better to calmly disengage than to demonstrate how they impact your feelings. They will enjoy your defenseless anger and/or your defenseless disappointment. It just validates that they're controlling you. Smiles, smirks, and laughter. One unexpected element is to see how they enjoy other individuals' pain and difficulty. In legal cases, I have seen sociopaths smile, smirk, or straight out laugh when a victim tells their story in a deposition or in open court. It gets your attention because, again, 90% of people would never ever do that. They would know better and feel some empathy for the victim. If you see somebody smiling, smirking, or chuckling aloud as they watch another's pain on television, in a motion picture, or on the street at a mishap, you could be watching a sociopath who cannot help himself or herself. Youth Conduct History. One of the DSM-5 requirements for antisocial sociopathic personality disorder is that the individual has signs of the disorder by age 15. That could include habits like torturing or eliminating little animals or animals, taking from family and complete strangers, fire starting, or a pretty serious pattern of lying. This is remarkably typical for sociopaths, so they could try to hide such a history or give excuses. The Parkland school shooter in Florida obviously had a history of damaging animals. Most people knew about that, but maybe didn't understand the potential it suggested. Chapter 8. Objectifying Women as Sociopaths. Recently, a good deal of limelight has focused on the misogynistic objectification of women and on business graft and corruption. If one looks carefully at these just recently inspected phenomena, one will most likely see narcissistic sociopaths at their centers. Put simply, narcissistic sociopaths objectify women, certainly all people, just because they see them as some things rather than somebodies. This is also why they won't think twice to bilk working class and even poor people out of their hard-earned and frantically needed cash. The specifying elements of narcissists include a prevalent pattern of grandiosity, in dream or conduct, really need for affection, and a pretty serious absence of concern for others. Sociopaths, technically individuals with a diagnosable antisocial personality disorder, show a prevalent pattern of neglect for and offense of the rights of others, and an absence of regret regardless of lying, being a cheater, and taking. While narcissism and sociopathy usually happen as a single personality disorders within a given individual, it isn't unusual for them to co-occur within the exact same person. To a conceited sociopath, NS, there's little distinction amongst vehicles, televisions, couches, fire hydrants, and people. They are all just things to use for home entertainment or personal advantage. For this reason, objectification of people can be considered a core function of this kind of psychopathology. Still, remarkably, it is not the NS's fault. The reason they see themselves as exceptional and justify that laws and appropriate social conduct need not apply to them is simply because they lack one of the most basic qualities that specify human beings, and most likely other highly progressed mammals too, specifically empathy. The capability to put oneself in others' shoes and try to notice what it is like to be them, to really imagine and get in touch with their emotions, feelings, thoughts, and self-respect. That is, to actually care about somebody aside from themselves. The reason NSs are without empathy is just because they actually lack the neural structures or brain physiology needed to feel compassionate feelings. They just do not have the needed brain devices to really care about anybody but themselves. An example is color loss of sight. Colorblind people actually lack the optical or neural procedures that are needed to view the full spectrum of color in the noticeable wavelength. It is not their fault. They just cannot see certain colors, shades, or tones. Likewise, narcissistic sociopaths just cannot experience the full series of human feelings that specify mentally healthy people. They appear to actually lack the devices to understand. Though that does not let them off the hook or excuse their terrible social conduct. It just clarifies why they do not get it. They just cannot get why you do not lie, cheat, take, control, betray, and abuse other humans. After all, if you total your automobile, break your television, or damage your couch, you can just get another one. And since NSs see no distinction between things and human beings, for them, people are quickly dispensable and changeable as well. Therefore, a NS will mentally view no distinction between an inflatable sex toy and a living person. To him or her, they're both just things or objects to be used. Still, clarifying antisocial conduct does not excuse it. So, why are some narcissistic sociopaths effective and others aren't? Usually it boils down to impulse control and intelligence. That is, effective narcissistic sociopaths can work out restraint, use some power over their spontaneous conduct, and make up for the spaces in their psychological collections with large intelligence, or understanding to say please and thank you without having a clue why it is essential to do so. Besides, it will not get you what you want, or it gets you in trouble if you do not. Not successful NSs likely have poor impulse control, and most likely do not intellectually make up for their psychological deficits, and therefore generally wind up ostracized or in jail. It is my belief that effective NSs typically gravitate to jobs like politics, organization, medication, and law. Now, I recognize that that is a sweeping generalization that I cannot back with regulated research, but it stands to reason those profession courses would attract NSs, and why lacking empathy could actually be adaptive in those settings, therefore causing quote-unquote success. Now the million-dollar question I am typically asked is, how do you handle the NS? The answer I normally give is, put as much distance as you can between yourself and the narcissistic sociopath when possible. You just need to keep away from manipulative people, and that includes people without a conscience. This has been Sociopath, the Difficulty of Sociopaths and Psychopaths by Victor Higgins, narrated by J.A. Leidig.